Hello everyone, it's George from Ireland, so welcome back to my channel. Anyway, in this video, I'm talking about the Ukraine conflict. So what's happening there? And the big news yesterday was that Ukraine shot down a Russian transport aircraft, Ilyushin 76, and I think that model comes from 1976, which is not to say that this particular aircraft was manufactured in 1976. So Ilyushin, as in the name of the aeronautical engineer who designed it, and that was shot down over Russian airspace, crashing in Belgorod region, which is adjacent to Ukraine. It crashed roughly 40 kilometers inside Russian territory. So I think I'm right in saying that's the first time the Ukrainians have shot down a Russian aircraft over Russian land. They've shot down a couple over the Sea of Azov last week, so they claim, but that seems to be true. The Sea of Azov being that inland sea in between the Crimean Peninsula, which is obviously Ukrainian sovereign territory, illegally occupied by Russia for almost 10 years, and in between the Ukrainian Crimea and Russia. So I'm not sure who's actually airspace. That bit was shot down over the sea, not over the land. So suggests that obviously Ukraine's capability is developing, just like that rather worrying signal for Russia the other day when the Ukrainian range with their drones has increased to something like 800 kilometers, to hitting things in Leningradskaya Oblast, which is the region surrounding St. Petersburg, Putin's hometown, destroying that gas terminal, like destroying some oil facilities in Bryansk and Belgorod regions. So hitting economic targets, I suppose because they're quite large, rather than military targets. Is that sensible? I don't think it is entirely. But anyway, and what was the Ilyushin 76 carrying? The Ukrainians say it was carrying S-300 missiles that the Russians are using against Ukraine. But the Russians said no. On board was 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war due to be exchanged. There were three Russian soldiers guarding the prisoners, who presumably were handcuffed anyway, and six Russian aircrew. But all 74 persons on board died in the crash. And as proof of this, Russian state TV, they showed a few corpses on the ground, but only a handful, not like anything approaching to 74. And all right, that could be because they scattered. So some of them might be so charred or just blown apart or just look so horrific they're just not presentable. Incidentally, on the Russian news, when they show cadavers of people killed in the war, they show the faces. They don't blur them out as they do in Western channels. And I suppose maybe it's a good thing that people are forced to face up to the full horror of war. It's very easy for me to sit here blithely talking about how being the right thing to kill people, but if you're confronted by just how ghastly it is, you may resile from that. Anyway, so it was obviously a coup for the Ukrainians. But why did Russia say that you killed a lot of your own soldiers who are prisoners of war? Is it a lie? It probably is, because RT, Russia Today, as in their English language Kremlin mouthpiece, gave the names of those Ukrainian prisoners of war who were killed, several of whom have already been handed back to Ukraine. So is this just a cock up? I suspect not. I suppose they're lying. Couldn't they come up with other names of people they actually have in custody? Or then if you then release them, that proves you are lying. So they're not terribly concerned about being proved to lie, so long as they do so later. I mean, because obviously the Russian government's in court lying again and again and again. Just absolute whoppers, just Pinocchio level lies. Like, saying that the Russian massive military buildup on the Ukraine's border in 2022 was no threat to anyone. This was only a military exercise, that they were not going to invade Ukraine. And when Putin called his so-called special military operation, know that it's not a war, that they weren't going to claim 1 centimeter of Ukrainian territory, that they were never going to send any conscripts there. Lie after lie after lie after lie, unblushingly told. So this is very likely another lie, because if you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, no, they certainly don't deserve that. If someone is a pathological liar and they make a dubious statement, would you believe it? No, you wouldn't. You'd assume that it's yet another falsehood from such a deceitful regime. But anyway, I don't actually know it to be a falsehood, because even the devil can speak true. And if these people turn up to a live and say disprove Russia's story, Russia could obviously just kill them to prevent that ever happening. But then they wouldn't be quite so easy to exchange for some Russian prisoners of war whom they want released, because Russia's thought to hold around 8,000 Ukrainian prisoners of war. They're thought to be around 2,000 soldiers, Russian soldiers who are prisoners of war in Ukrainian hands. So it's believed that Ukrainian rocket brought down the aircraft. Ukrainian intelligence, the SBU, did they get intelligence from whatever communication intercepts that this plane was taking off at this time, going to that location, carrying the S-300 missiles? Okay, you could see that the plane other ways through radar or whatever, but you wouldn't necessarily know it was carrying. Because obviously it's always worth it shooting down an enemy military aircraft, but particularly if it's got this valuable cargo on board. These missiles, they cost at least hundreds of thousands of dollars each, even these rather third-rate Russian ones. Anyway, so I suspect the POW story is disinformation intended to lower Ukrainian morale, because their initial jubilation would lead to depression if they believe they killed their men, and they'd be more reluctant to shoot down with these aircraft in future. And you could obviously transfer prisoners of war by aircraft, but why would you when you could just take them by road, which is cheaper? There's no particular rush to do it. And Russia's taken almost no Ukrainian prisoners for the past couple of months because they've hardly advanced at all. So the prisoners they took in serious numbers were back in 2022. So those would have been transformed to Russia months ago, if not over a year ago. Hold them deep inside Russia to absolutely minimize the chance of escape. You don't want to hold them anywhere near Ukraine or any border, the chance they'd escape and get over the border to friendly territory, at least neutral territory. So the Speaker of the Russian Parliament, Volodin, he said the Federal Republic of Germany and the United States of America were responsible for this, presumably on the basis that they supplied the munitions which shot down the aircraft. But obviously, it's a slightly worrying plan for Russia. So the war in the air, Russia still has air superiority, not as strongly as it used to before. These F-16s, the Ukrainians have promised over a year ago, they still haven't materialized. They're going to come in the next few months. Denmark, the Netherlands, who else is donating them? I'm not sure. Norway, the United Kingdom is training some pilots. I don't think the UK is training them on F-16s or whatever. Is it going to give them Typhoons? Planes are due to be retired. The United States, I don't think they're giving F-16s. So these Fighting Falcons, they're said to be superb combat aircraft. I don't know anything about aircraft, but obviously they're very slow in coming. And I realize I have to train them carefully because these things cost tens of millions of dollars, even relatively old aircraft. And you don't want them to waste it just crashing, or indeed these pilots to be easily destroyed in combat. But will that be a game changer? I think not, because there won't be enough of them. It's only about 40 they're going to get initially. And they've got to obviously replace some losses. And various countries like Slovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, they donated their MiG aircraft, their Soviet era aircraft, which again, certainly by today's standards, are at least a generation behind. They're quite second rate, because that guy Artyom Mikoyan, who invented them, that aeronautical designer, they say he really got promoted because his elder brother, Anastas Mikoyan, was briefly the Soviet head of state in the mid-60s. He was a confrère of Stalin, an Armenian. So the MiG is actually contributing Mikoyan, named after Artyom Mikoyan, who designed them. And obviously the MiGs we're talking now, which are like a 1980s design, they're not from his time. He died in 1976, but apparently it's along the same lines. It evolved from that one. So Ukraine's a long way from achieving air parity, and obviously it's so important. It's one of the reasons why the counteroffensive failed. But Ukraine could have that air superiority if only Western countries would commit and just donate enough aircraft, which I know is easier said than done, is not cheap. But if the Occident wants this war to end in Ukrainian victory, is got to spend the money, and that actually might be a real bargain. It's a false economy not to do so and let Russia win and let other aggressors be emboldened. Anyway, thank you so much for watching my channel. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Goodbye. Good night.